welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And today I wanted to talk about some of my childhood and middle school and high school and so on and so forth, the feelings of isolation that had followed me. And what I realized this morning when I was sitting in my meeting was that all along I've been thinking that I was isolating myself over all of these years. But what I felt like, what hit me today is that it felt to me like I was being isolated, like that I wasn't making the choice to withdraw myself, but instead that the world was isolated, was leaving me isolated. I was a victim of my circumstances. And that early victim insight laid the groundwork, I think, for the thinking problem, seeking comfort through escape instead of connection. Because what I felt about being the victim of my own depression, I think, was that I didn't have a choice to connect. So those emotions as a child, which anybody who knew me back then would definitely agree that I was very emotional and I cried a lot. And knowing that about myself, I felt disconnected. I felt different. I started to feel like there wasn't anybody else like me, like nobody else was as emotional as me. And I think I don't know why it is. I just remember crying a lot. And I cried more than everybody else in my family. I I don't know if I cried more than my friends because I did it when I was alone. But I think that eventually that illusion of belonging I began to seek through alcoholism, which is interesting to me because what I hear a lot of times is when I was drinking, that feeling of belonging went away. And I don't think that's true with me. I don't think that drinking gave me this false sense of belonging anymore. You know what I mean? I feel like it was something I was seeking through alcohol, but I never actually achieved it. It definitely made my inhibitions go away. It made me be able to function despite the feeling of not belonging, but I didn't feel that I belonged when I was drinking. But when I drank enough, it gave me that feeling that I was safe from rejection and I was safe from if somebody were to, if I'm in a crowded room and I'm standing over here in the corner by myself, as long as I had my alcohol, I was fine. It didn't matter. Nobody needed to talk to me. So the more I drank, though, the more I was mentally distancing myself from people. I wasn't protecting myself. It was actually turning that feeling of being isolated, that feeling that I was a victim of the world and I was being isolated from it, it magnified that and shifted it over into isolating myself. So what felt like I'm a victim became like, okay, well, if I don't belong anywhere and I feel like I'm being isolated from the world, then I'm going to drink this and it must be right for me to isolate. So it like magnified that loneliness. I drank because I liked the feeling of getting drunk. I drank to get drunk. Every time I drank, it was to get drunk. It wasn't for any other reason other than to get drunk. It wasn't because I liked the taste of it. It wasn't anything but to get drunk. I was trying to mentally like disappear from the discomfort that I was always feeling. Um, Not realizing that it was feeding the discomfort. I remember when I quit drinking, one of the biggest like challenges for me was to be able to like feel comfortable without something in my hands. And that's just like a small example of of the challenge that was going on from the inside out. And it wasn't about what I wore or what I did with my hands. It was learning how to think differently. It didn't matter where my hands were. It mattered what was going through my head, like the structure and direction of my thoughts. When I first got sober, I needed specific and constant direction. And a lot of it seemed like for me that I was getting direction on what to do. But over time, with hearing about the steps, reading through the big book, I was actually getting the mental framework that I could depend on, um, so that I would know what to think in certain circumstances. My own thinking, I didn't trust my own thinking, and I've talked about that recently. I always felt irrational, that I was crazy. And so the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen is to be exposed to somebody else telling me that I was crazy. Today, my husband and I actually joke around sometimes, and it's even been even more of a joke. Just stay with me. But even more of a joke now that I had a stroke. So he'll say things like, and believe me, he didn't start doing this until it was okay. But we'll say like, if somebody um, gosh, what's an example? I don't know. I'm gonna make soup tonight. Then maybe he will respond and say, "What are you crazy? Who in their right mind would make soup tonight?" And it's a joke because he is fully aware of my my issues that I've had over my lifetime. And it really just having that kind of lightheartedness, it really shows me um, how I'm not crazy, if that makes sense. I know it makes sense. So um, that's what we do around here. A lot of times when we work through different things, then there are some things that we can actually make light of, and it takes the edge off of some of the problems like my stroke. I I suffer very much with difficulty finding words and finishing my sentences in a timely manner when him and I are talking. And that's something that we don't joke about. So I just want to give some examples of what can be funny and what is not okay to joke about in the house. So anyway, um, so for most of my life, and sometimes now, it's part of like my character defect. I feel like that feeling that I don't trust my own thinking. And I don't feel like I have to anymore. I have the tools now that I don't have to just depend on me. And that's what I used to do. And that's, I think, why I eventually got to this point where I just felt like I didn't trust my own thinking. Um, I felt like I was weak and I felt like there was no hope for me, that this is my thinker's broken and there's no way that it's going to get fixed. But as I continued to get the suggestions from like my sponsor and listening to people shared in meetings about how do you handle resentments? How do you handle when you get angry or when you get scared? And when I heard people talk about how they handled different things, it helped me. It slowly helped me to discover, to learn new habits like responses to my feelings. So learning the connection, it's really relearning the connection because I wasn't born with a disconnect. It was something that grew over time in me. And after working the steps and more than anything, applying the principles every day in my own life, that that spirituality began to come into play. And I didn't know the first thing about what spirituality was, but what happened for me is I just kept coming back and I kept getting like the same guidance that mimicked what I was hearing in the big book, what I was hearing in the meetings, and it started to be mold like mold my thinker, I guess. And that's what for me has been this slow spiritual awakening where my thinking is rewiring. I don't want to say it's past tense. It's in the process of rewiring and probably always will be. But turning these different emotions, and I talked about this recently, from fear to trust, from feeling like I need to control or change people, places, and things, to acceptance, to even be in a situation and have something that I disagree with happen, and then and have it like whisper so slightly in my head, like, okay, this is you're at a crossroads right here. You can either try to control the situation and try to change it, or you can accept it. Like the fact that that even crosses my mind, that is beyond me. But that's how I know that the program works. Like the spirituality, it changes more than like prayer and meditation and all of that. It changes the way that I think. It changes the way that I see others. It changes the way that I respond to others. And it changes the way that I feel about belonging. Um, I feel like I belong. Almost everywhere I go, I feel like I belong. Yesterday when I went to church for the third time, that's right, three times, and three times in a row so far, three Sundays. I I sat down, I had my tablet that I take my notes, and I don't know, I sat down and I felt like I belonged. I was comfortable. I was comfortable. I knew part of it is that I knew what to expect, that it was the same thing that I had the previous two Sundays, that I'll sit and I'll listen. Like first they open up and they sing. And then I'll listen and I'll take notes and then I'll leave and my husband will pick me up. Like I feel like I belong. I'm starting to see some of the same faces, but nobody yet has said hello to me or talked to me or anything like that. Which I'm kind of surprised because anytime I've ever gone to church previously in my life, like people are coming up to you and introducing themselves and stuff like that. And that doesn't happen here, but it's okay. I think I'm just kind of going there and I want to learn. That's what I feel like. That's the backdrop for me going is I want to learn and I want to strengthen my relationship with my concept of my higher power. And I believe that I can do that by going to church in addition to going to my meetings and doing all the things that I do. So, yeah, it's just like the next step in my journey. And one thing that I heard today at the very end of the reading was that I am living the life now that I once fantasized about. And man, that really resonated with me. I have gained such an enormous amount of freedom through self-awareness. It's like freedom of choice, freedom of emotions, freedom of like physical, mental, spiritual, emotional freedom just through self awareness. It's not perfect. I still find myself, if I'm angry or I'm sad, the first thing I'm going to do is run into my room and get in my bed under the blankets. That's what I do. But learning how to apply the principles in my program, I don't stay in my bed as long. I'm gently guiding myself back towards connection. I went for a walk today down to the water, which is what I do at least once a day with Autumn. And I was standing there, and the water was like glass, and I could see the reflections of the blue sky and the clouds in the water. And I could see the reflection of the fall trees and everything. And um, it was just beautiful. And I'm living the life that I would have only ever imagined. It's what I always wanted. It's what I always wanted. And here I am. And I have a life of meaning. I have a life with an incredible amount of clarity on feeling like I know what my role is here. And I feel like I understand that role, or at least I have a lot more time to think about it now that I'm medically retired. Um, but it's also allowed me to lean into that role that I've wanted, which is to help other people and to share the the principles of my program that make my life so much better and help other people have a sense of belonging. And I feel like when I record my podcast and I share about what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, and I just rattle off at the mouth like I do, I feel like that I'm giving others that sense of belonging. I'm hoping that I'm giving others a reason to no longer seek protection from life itself, but to participate in it. And that takes courage. It takes courage to step out of the isolation um, and into the world. But the best way to do it, the way that I've learned how to do it, is to do it one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, one emotion at a time. And somehow I'm doing it. So I know that you can too, if you if you have the willingness and the openness to seek a solution, then it is there. It exists. I am living proof of it. So that's what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you tomorrow.